Hello, and welcome to Be Yoga Live with Jenny B. I'm your host, Jenny B, coming to you from Montreal. Today we're welcoming Dominic Tambuzzo, who's some of these people, I don't know where to put them, in the friend category or the teacher category or the tenant category, somewhere in all of that. The tenant category. Welcome, Dom. How are you doing?
Thank you, Jen. I'm doing well, and I'm like delighted to be here to share this next half hour with you and the people that are watching. So thanks for the invitation.
My pleasure. So looking forward to speaking to you. As I was saying a moment ago, you're the first person coming on the show, on this very new show, to speak about the subject of Ayurveda, which is very directly linked to yoga. So we'll talk a little bit about that link, because some people, myself included, are teaching yoga or have been teaching yoga and have never really came across the word or even understood what it meant. And I'll always hold you in that spot of the person who first really made me understand what the heck this word was. I was teaching yoga already for some time, and I saw Dom around. We both worked at Happy Tree. He was a massage therapist there, and I was teaching yoga. And the only thing he ever talked about was Ayurveda, whether it was that there was no way to warm up the food in the studio or whatever the thing was. And I admittedly, my reaction, as I've said before, to Ayurveda was to, kind of roll my eyes and feel like it was just this general thing, like you open up the newspaper and it says you're a Gemini, so you must be this way. And I had an aversion to that. But in meeting Dom, probably first through having a massage with him, an Abhyanga massage, which if you can go see Dom for an Abhyanga massage, I highly recommend it. And then understanding what was behind the massage and what was behind Ayurveda, I realized that there's nothing general about it. It is the most specific way to understand ourselves and understand other people. And I'm looking forward to talking to you. I wanted to just quickly read. So I've known Dom for I don't even know how many years now, and never read his bio until actually just this morning, when I was just going to speak about being a certified Ayurvedic practitioner, Ayurvedic massage therapist. And then I got to the bottom of his bio, and I'm going to read it. I hope that's okay, Dom. Well, it's your bio, and
yeah, go for it.
Public. I laughed so hard because he's talking about his Ayurvedic constitution, which Dom and I share an Ayurvedic constitution, which is Pitta Vata, Vata Pitta. And in reading what he wrote here, I could write the same thing if I were to include it on my own bio. So Dom says,
no doubt.
And we have seen each other both in balance and both out of balance enough times. Yep. So Dom says, when in balance, I am curious, conscientious, patient, communicative, creative, sensitive, professional, dedicated, and heart-centered. I'm compassionate about life, people, and the planet. Sounds pretty amazing. When I'm out of balance, he admits, here's
the bad news.
I am forgetful, short-tempered, reactive, unfocused, scattered, uncommunicative, and ego-centered. So I think today, from looking at your face and the sun shining on you, Dom, you're probably more in balance than out of balance. Is that correct?
Yeah, I am. I'm yeah, I mean, the sun is definitely nourishing, and it's calming or pacifying my vata. So that's good, right? So that vata needs the heat and the warmth. So
much that you didn't forget to show up to the show today. You're on. You remember to show up. I remember to show up. We're both here.
You remember to show up. Isn't that amazing? Like, I would have done this all on my own, right? So yeah, where do we go from here?
I wanted to ask we've said this show is going to touch on DNA and epigenetics, and right now I feel like that's the coolest thing we could possibly be speaking about. I wanted first, though, if you could just give us a little, I sort of said how I came to discover Ayurveda, which was handy enough, was you, but I'm curious a little bit about your path in discovering Ayurveda, if you had begun, as I did, teaching yoga and then discovering Ayurveda, or what was your path to discovering it?
So I did a teacher training like you did. This is after many years of practicing yoga. So I had been practicing at that point, but maybe 12 years. And then I got, kind of some kind of cosmic communication that came to me and said, why don't you become a yoga teacher? And I had a business at that point. So I didn't, but I didn't fight it off. So that part was good because it settled in me and it stirred me in a good way. So it like lit something up. So I did a yoga teacher training. So I started hearing about Ayurveda, but very little. Like 200, the basic 200-hour teacher training, maybe 3 hours of Ayurveda. So that was my first kind of entry point, but that was a long time ago. Fast forward maybe 2 years later, where I finished my my certification, my yoga certification. I had my business. I ended up. It was a very like dramatic and shifting year, 2010. So I sold my business, left my relationship at that point, and where would I go? I went to India for 2 months. So that's where I started kind of hearing. You can't go, and especially in the south, in Kerala, you cannot turn your head and not see something Ayurvedic, whether it's a little clinic or store, pharmacy or whatever. And then in the ashrams that I was staying in, or some of the Westerners that were there, I started hearing about Ayurveda massage training, et cetera, et cetera. And my field, my slate was blank. So I had no idea what I was going to do, literally like no idea where I was going from there after I sold my business. So I had some time ahead of me. So I started communicating with an institute in the north where I was heading, and by email. So, and Westerners and this pitta kind of way of being, right? So I wrote to them and I said, I heard you offer training. When does it start? How long is it? How much does it cost? I'm surprised I didn't ask when is lunch break, or that kind of thing. So the most beautiful and surprising and appropriate answer, they came back, I don't know, a day or two later, and they said, well, yes, we do training, and it starts when you get here. So it's like my first instinct, again, this pitta, like fiery, result oriented and judgmental, right? So I said, this is not serious. When I get here, what kind of outfit is this? And but I followed that. There was something in me that said, go. And I went, and I ended up going, and I studied with them for 2 weeks. They showed me the Abhyanga that you tried with me, that I've been practicing ever since. But they also gave me an intro to Ayurveda. So that's where it kind of bloomed, or kind of at least germinated for me, was in India. And we're talking like 9 years ago. So, and I came back thinking, all right, and I bought a whole bunch of books in India at a little bookstore, and made a care package and sent all these Ayurvedic books to myself here. So when I got back, I said, okay, I think I'm going to go back, study for a year or maybe a year and a half, become a practitioner. And then by that point, I got back in my relationship, and my girlfriend said, I think there's an Ayurveda center at the corner of our house. And that is, I mean, what else can be said? So I literally walked up the street, turned left, and I went to see the Anita Sharma and her husband Manu, who are the first people that I started studying Ayurveda with. So the basic foundations of training, the 400-hour training, was with her and with them. And since then, I've been doing more bodywork training, more advanced or bodywork training, massage training in the States at Kripalu, and advanced modules in Ayurveda in Boston. So I've been going down there for the last 3 years, and the most recent one was in August. So we did it through by Zoom. So that is kind of the short, long story of how I got to that, and where I am now. So
right down the street, a couple blocks away. That's so fantastic.
Isn't that like
It obviously
Seriously?
was meant to be. So thankfully you listened to that niggling feeling that said, trust the people who are going to work their course around you on your own time. Because it's not a Western thing. We're, you know, as you so clearly mentioned a moment ago, we want to know exactly what, exactly when, exactly how, and you open yourself up to see how other cultures do it, and magic happens right down the street from you. Thank you so much
Yeah,
for sharing that. So then, at some
thank
point, it's
you.
led you to pick up this book by Dr. Harry Sharma, and I did check it out. I don't have
You
the book in
checked it
front
out.
of me, but
So
I would
this is
be.
the book.
Mhm.
It's called Dynamic DNA, Activating Your Inner Energy for Better Health. And so Dr. Sharma, I actually met this gentleman. This is, hang on a second, where is it? This is him. And he's an MD, but he studied Ayurveda. He's a fellow at different, like big institutes and schools and universities. And I met him a few years ago at an Ayurvedic conference in Boston, that my advanced module teacher Anusha Segal was organizing. So she invited us to go and be a part of the thing, and that's where I met. And there was a whole bunch of, basically it was an kind of integrative medicine with Ayurveda, and the focus was on cancer and how integrative medicine and Ayurveda can come together to help and to either prevent or try to find ways of palliative ways or other ways of working with different types of cancers. And he was one of the speakers, and he actually signed the book. So
Nice.
yeah, so I've been reading it, and I think I mentioned to you that I'm in no way a DNA expert or geneticist, or I hope there's not too many geneticists listening today,
Who
but
are going to call you out on the things you
who
mess
are
up. But
gonna call me out.
could you
Yeah.
just briefly kind of give us an overview of what, like, the word epigenetics? I'm very much immersed in that right now. I recently did a hypnosis course where I was reading Bruce Lipton's book.
Okay.
Super interesting stuff right now. Could you give us just a very quick thing, like what is DNA? What are
What is?
epigenetics?
Yeah. So DNA. I mean, we've all heard of DNA being, our genetic code, right? Our imprint, blueprint, whatever that is, whatever you want to call it. it's the two strands of genes, of chromosomes that come from your mom and your dad, that create your own DNA code or genetic code, right? So um, it's what we are, mentally, physically. It's what creates, this big nose, or your pretty eyes, and um, so it's obviously it's a super important. It's he likens it to, and that's what I find interesting, is that he kind of condenses it, and he calls it our recorder. So DNA is
Mm.
obviously molecular structures, cells, and nucleoproteins, and nucleotides that are, I mean, that's the technical aspect, that come together. Um, and in the past, so for instance, maybe not you, but my physics teacher back in let's say in the 70s, I shouldn't say 60s, in the 70s or 80s, let's say the 80s, all right. um, Back then, or maybe, yeah, the 80s, DNA was kind of a fixed thing. This is your DNA, and there's no way of getting out of it. This is your genetic code. This is your makeup, and there's no way of changing that. Um, and then epigenetics came along. So the study of the field of epigenetics came along, and it's a brand new open field. It's still being understood and explored, and um, so epigenetics is basically, um, it's telling us that our genetic code, the actual genes, cannot be changed, but epigenetics is the expression of our genes. So we could, through, and this is where Ayurveda comes in, um, through modifications in our lifestyle, in our food, nutrition, um, behavioral process. This is where we can begin to change the expression of the gene. So this is what epigenetics is exploring, and this is where Dr. Sharma, kind of studied it as well, of course, and saying, wait a minute, this is sounds similar to what Ayurveda has been doing and has known. Because if we go back to the idea that our DNA, and there's a whole study of DNA and heredity. So where do some of our hereditary genes come from? So my nose, for instance, or certain diseases that are inherited, right? He argues that based on just acknowledging that the DNA, or at least following up on this idea that DNA is recording, it's this instrument of recording everything that we do, that we think, that we are, that we eat, et cetera, then everything is hereditary, is what he's arguing. So it's not just certain, like Parkinson's or certain hemophilia or certain diseases that are known to be hereditary. He's saying, well, I'm going to push it and argue that everything is hereditary. So if everything is hereditary, then we could, through epigenetics, through this gene modification or modifying the messages that are being sent back to the genes, then we could turn on and turn off certain genes that we kind of train, I guess, if you wish. So that's kind of, I guess, the gist of it.
Is that the way then to bring ourselves back into balance? Is that the idea, as we would in Ayurveda, that we're switching off this or switching off that so that we can come closer to, I always look at it, coming closer to our true nature, coming back into balance?
I mean, we can also switch on and switch off the wrong ones, right? And then, create disease, right? Which, again, according to him, everything is hereditary. So, in the womb, and it starts in the womb, and going forward, right? But yes, the short answer is, and this is where it kind of opens up those possibilities that the DNA itself cannot, the actual genes, the 20,000 genes that we have in our body cannot be changed. It's their expression that can be modified. It can be,
wow.
yeah.
So is that like, is it one more case where it's making me laugh a little bit? I think of just something like pranayama, or no, I won't even say the word pranayama. I'll say the word breathing techniques. So here in the West, these psychologists are teaching breathing techniques and claiming breathing techniques when really it's pranayama if you use a name. So is this idea of epigenetics, is this like, oh, Western science has discovered this thing, but no, really it didn't. It was really Ayurveda all along. Am I understanding that epigenetics is modern day Ayurveda?
I'm going to say yes for sure, because that's my field of interest, and yeah, he makes a case that I'm totally open to. But at the same time, if we look at meditation, meditation, where now science is involved in meditation and looking at brain scanning different parts of our brain, right? And now it's almost like they're now confirming what yoga, meditation, Ayurveda, which kind of, which is kind of a part of the family, right? What Ayurveda has known, or yoga has known, or meditation, or Kundalini, et cetera, has known for thousands of years, that, and they didn't have, ultrasonic, whatever things that they can measure things, but they knew that um, they're altering, there was ways of altering our, this epigenetic way of altering our at a cellular level. So, and maybe that can bring me to a little bit more in Ayurveda when we talk about the Mahabhutas, or the 5 grand elements in Ayurveda. So which is the foundation of Ayurveda. It's like, what is Ayurveda? Is what these 5 elements are. So the first is ether, or space, or akasha, and the space that contains us, the space that holds everything in us, the space that we know up there, space in our mind, etc., etc. But when we talk about spacey people, it's this space, this notion, or very subtle notion of energy, of that kind of energy. But it's also physically represented in our gut, in our colon, in our lungs, that kind of space as well. So we can bring it to that level as well. And then there's air, which is, we know air. It's mobile, it's moving, it's drying, it's cold. So this can represent other biological, physiological, and mental aspects of who we are, what makes us up. And then we've got fire, water, and earth. So those are the basic foundations of these 5 grand elements. And these are kind of the manifestation of what, at a cellular level, what is in every cell. So if every cell, every chromosome has these 5 elements, then we're talking about what Ayurveda has been talking about for thousands of years, right?
So is it like, I think, sorry to cut you off, that's my vata.
Yeah.
I'm just having this image too, and I've thought about it. And again, I think it was something that I watched, a clip I watched with Bruce Lipton. Again, I'm putting together all the pieces of how much influence he's actually had over me when I didn't even know what his name was. But I'm thinking of like the divide between the physics and metaphysics, and how, we think of all these metaphysical, unexplainable, esoteric things that are happening, or we talk about in the East. In the West, we let go of that. We just stuck with the very physical, proven stuff. And India and certainly other places in the world have, it seems to me, have always embraced the two, understanding that we need the physics and the metaphysics. And now it seems like, from what you're saying, in his work, being able to link epigenetics to Ayurveda, it just seems like, one more like, oh, actually, wait, this was one more time where those guys had it figured out, but now we can prove it, like there's the inner knowingness, and there's these ancient teachings that have always been there that you kind of have to put faith and trust in. And Ayurveda often gets, like, I don't know if it gets a bad rep, but like it can kind of get shelved on the book of, like, esoteric stuff that we can't actually prove. But maybe now Western science and how he's making the link, we're like, oh yeah, actually there was something here for the last 5,000 years.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. And we talked about meditation, breath work, what you're talking about, pranayama. That is also being used in stress management. It's being used in kind of in a modern in a modern lifestyle to bring more awareness, more presence, more calm, etc. And that is being studied deeper and deeper. Integrative medicine is joining forces, and that's where integrative medicine kind of came to be, where they're saying, well, I think we should work more closely together, because there's something there. It's almost like taking off blindfolds and realizing, and it's because we live in a society where everything is hyper focused on one. Let's break it down to, let's say, turmeric, right? So now, I mean, turmeric in India, it's like, or in Ayurveda, if you want turmeric to really work, it's got to be used as a whole, root, and not just the curcumin that they sell in a pill. That so that's the idea, right? So it's like the whole, and again, this is holistically. So the whole is always going to be more uh, more beneficial, or is always going to provide the deeper healing, or the deeper, way of finding balance, as you mentioned before, and on and on and on. Because I guess we're driven by, wanting to, profit driven, to let's sell something. Let's sell, curcuma with black pepper, or now that they're coming up with other herbs that are, they're removing particular micronutrients. It's not going to work. I mean, it may do certain things, but in the end, if we're not eating in a balanced way, if we're not, we talked about the five elements. We can talk about the six tastes in Ayurveda, where we talk about we need all of these six different tastes to make sure that we keep a balanced doshic makeup and a balanced constitution, if you wish. Yeah.
We need it all. We need the physics and the metaphysics. We need both of them to understand how life works.
Yeah, and I think that the physics needs to probably integrate more metaphysics, or more of the ancient healing practices, because there's wisdom there. There's wisdom that we've lost, and that we don't, if we're not observing it, then we don't believe it, right? It's all about science, and seeing is believing. And in Ayurveda, there's an element of the unmanifest, the universal, the cosmic part of life, that is also part of who we are, and that cannot be measured, that cannot be observed. And yeah, so it's growing. That kind of collaboration is growing, and it's fun. I feel like privileged to be sitting here and watching this. For instance, this book, right? This book is another kind of small step forward to show that you're not reinventing anything. This has existed.
Instead, I think there are many of us can go into learning a learning modality that doesn't have all of that, proof, and still trust it. Like, I'm really realizing these days there are a lot of issues coming up that I know, this is not right, or I know this is right. But you can't ask me to find you an article, a peer-reviewed article. It just is in my gut or in my heart. I know that it's right. For some people, that doesn't pass. So thankfully, we're starting to have these books come out, and a little bit, and people who are in kind of both worlds. He seems like he is really in both worlds, where he can put it together so that people who are a little, who can't go into that place of faith, or the more esoteric stuff, for the whole rest of us to be able to actually say, hey, wait, there is value here. I'm so happy you introduced us to that book. I'm going to try not to give Jeff Bezos any more of my money, and I'm going to try to find an actual bookstore and purchase that book in the very near future. And I'm sure that we could
you can probably you can maybe even invite Dr. Sharma to your show and have him come in, because he also wrote a book, which is probably the next book I want to read. It's called The Answer to Cancer. So and it's through, obviously, a Western perspective, but also an Eastern perspective. He brings in Ayurveda in there. So yeah, it's a fascinating, it's kind of like dipping into and it's pretty accessible, if you know a little bit about I mean, if you're curious, it's accessible. If you already are in the wellness field, or yoga, or meditation, or anything, because he we talked about Ayurveda, because Ayurveda is kind of in a sense the mother of other things, but we're talking about breath, we're talking about Karma is another thing that he talks about in the sense that if DNA is recording everything, then karma is part and parcel of this, because karma is what's, past lives and karmic lives, the reaction, action, reaction. And actually, I want to just read a quick thing that I found very interesting about, talks about karma. Where is it?
Perfect timing. I did a show a couple weeks ago on ahimsa and vegetarianism and karma.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Now, for all of a sudden, I can't find that thing. But anyway, he kind of he talks about how in physics, there's an action and then there's an equal or opposite reaction. This in the observable thing of physics, right? And what is that if it's not karma, right? It's action reaction. So he blends that in and he weaves that into the book. So it's pretty cool, because it's like, oh wow. So it's taking a wider perspective of what we, I guess, in the West, always focus narrowly on, that particular thing and or that particular gene, because there are genes that are, now have been, and it's beautiful because they can narrow down one particular gene for a particular disease, like Huntington's disease. They've narrowed it down to one particular gene, which is, wow, that's amazing. But it's also important to have that wider perspective and see that it's what you're observing has been observed, in a different way, and it's existed, and and I guess the bigger picture is, for me anyway, is that they're saying how epigenetics has opened that door to empowering, I guess, yourself, and saying, I can with lifestyle, with nutrition, the right nutrition, the right kind of behavior, the right stress management skills, environmental factors, I could change, the expression of certain genes, so that it doesn't mean that because, you were born with that particular gene that, being obese. So the obese, like obesity is, that's it. You're going to be obese.
No, and it does come back to, like, obviously as a mom and as somebody who's so focused on maternity now, in my mind, all I'm thinking is, wow, epigenetics and our offspring. That's now what I'm trying to wrap my mind around after this conversation. How exciting. Thank you, Dominic.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask if people want to come see you. You do Ayurvedic consultation and you do some pretty sweet massages. I will tell you once again, Dom was my exclusive massage therapist for many years, and I should probably come back in the near future, because it's chilly out there and fast moving out there in this season. So where can people find you, and what kind of packages do you have?
Yeah, so I just actually created a kind of professional page that I've not had for a long time. So I'm going to put it in the little chat. I'm going to show you. I'm going to put the link.
We can put it at the end in the comments. Yeah.
Okay,
I don't know
sure,
if I'll
perfect.
be able to. Yep.
So they can definitely connect with me there. They can do a Google search as well. Dominic Tambuzzo. There's only one. Ayurveda, and there's ways of connecting with me through there, but we can put the link here, share my webpage. There's maybe one last thing that I would like to mention, because it was launched today, is that I'm offering gift certificates for the holidays. So the gift certificate this is kind of the physical gift certificate.
Can you buy one for me, Dom?
Huh?
Can you buy me one?
Can I buy you one? Oh, can I buy you one? How about asking one of your viewers if they'd be nice enough to offer you one? I'm sure
Those are
there's a
snazzy.
special.
Well done, Dom. So
Yeah,
we can
thanks.
reach out to you on the internet,
So
and
this is
if you're looking
actually, yeah, this is
beautiful.
actually the physical one. If somebody wants me to send them or send somebody that they want it to be sent to, then I could write down the person's name, blah, blah, blah. Otherwise, there's a link on the page that I created, and there's a gift certificate link, and they can fill out the form, and they can also do it digitally or electronically that way, and give me all the information about in whose name, whether it's for them or somebody else, the amount, etc. It's pretty easy.
Perfect timing. Yeah, on December 11th. Now we're steering away once again from doing all of our shopping on Amazon, and we're going to go purchase a gift certificate for Nabianga with Dominic
And it's
Tambuzzo.
local. It's help local Ayurvedic people.
Yes.
Like you too.
Like me
Right?
too. Thank you so much, Dom. I can't believe
Thank
after all
you.
this time we finally had a chance to connect face to face, or at least screen to screen. And
Screen to
I look
screen.
forward to seeing you at some point in real life, Dom. And for everybody else who's listening, thank you so much for listening today. I hope you join me next week. We touched on a few of the things that I will talk about next week. We're going to talk about Satya and the truth. And I think searching for truth in these times is not always super easy. So please join me next week, 1:30 p.m. on Friday. Well, this next week you can join too. You can tune in, Dom. This is me.
I
This
will
is all
tune in.
me.
It's going to be on Friday, next Friday, 1:30.
Yes, unless you forget, unless the vata creeps in there again. Go get yourself a nice massage so you can ground yourself. Thank you so much, Dom. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and we'll see you again soon. Peace.
Thank you very much. Peace to you.